Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the Bio Breakthroughs podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is Sandra von Meier, the head of business development and licensing at Debiopharm. How are you today?
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak today about Debiopharm and what is special about our company.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. Let's kick things off. Tell the audience about your background, and then we'll go into an overview of the company.
Yes, great. So, I'm just with the company since a year, and it was really exciting journey to get there. I started off in biotech some years ago, and then actually went to big pharma companies like Merck and Bayer. I did a lot of transactions, and I really, focused on oncology and loved to do these exciting in licensing and out licensing partnerships between biotech and pharma companies. So I got a lot of experience. And then actually one day, guess what? I did a deal with Debiopharm on an in licensing. So from the Merck side oncology team, I was responsible for bringing in their super exciting phase 3 assets into Merck. And that was clear that I then knew the company. So it wasn't a surprise that some years later we came together and I actually decided to take on the head of business development role.
And wow, that's an interesting story about like the path that brought you to the company. Um, what were some of the things that really? I mean, you gave us kind of part of what led you there, but what really continued to say like this is a company I want to be at? I really love what they're doing. Was there anything else in the decision making process that's like I want to go to this company?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the present where we are, where the markets are very tough, you have a lot of biotech companies struggling, then you have a lot of pharma looking what they want to do. And when I did the transaction with Debiopharm, I actually realized that they are right in the middle between these two companies. So basically, what what we are doing is bridging the gap between biotech and pharma companies in mainly with a focus on the oncology, so we can really enter into the next level of development. And that is really, which I found a very interesting business model, which is very unique in the world, I think, and which clearly has the best of both sides, if I can call it like that.
And let's continue on that. Give the audience. You probably have to go far now for people not to know what W Farms. At least the core, right? But give us a continued general overview of the company where things are at today.
Yeah, so when you look on the web page, you will see that's a lot of different products in the pipeline, but that is basically our business model. We are there and bringing in mainly assets before the clinic into the company because our expertise is mainly in development, clinical development, preclinical development, but also we have a lot of experience in manufacturing. So for all these early stage biotechs who usually mainly have discovery functions, we are then the company to go for with the assets because we can add the next level of value to these products. And then also because of my background and also of the company business model, we are later looking for good pharma or global commercialization product partners to out-license then these products. And if you look at the pipeline, you will see it's agnostic from modalities. So we have all lots of different assets, which we just found have very interesting science. That is our selection criteria. We are really going by the science. So you see, we have ADCs, which are very much in fashion these days. We also have reformulation products because we have an heritage in formulation from Turk-Tuolin, which which we brought to the market. But we also are invested in radiopharmaceuticals as we have a product which just entered a phase 1 trial. And clearly, we have a lot of small molecule expertise, and we already just announced recently that we have a V1 inhibitor, which also started 2 phase 1 trials in small cell lung cancer and GBM.
And talk me through a little bit. I know you mentioned part of it in your overview. W Farm's approach to drug development, and then specifically, if you can highlight, how you're working with startups to enhance innovation and kind of expedite those clinical
Yeah.
trials timelines.
Yeah. So we are really out where you can meet us live in all the partnering conferences. So we just came back from Bio. We have a very broad search and evaluation team, and that is really attending nearly every conference. So there's a lot of touch points. You can also connect to us via the web page or also via email. But basically, our search focus is for innovation and mainly on oncology. So once we make a decision on in-licensing of a project, we are basically finalizing the package to bring it really into the first clinical phase 1 trial. That is a critical step because you need a lot of experience how to find IND and how to complete the package. And they're here really at Debiopharm. We have a success story for this. And for some products, we even bring them longer into clinical trials. What is special here, and I have not mentioned it in the beginning, that we are privately owned. That means we have a different attitude toward timelines and also towards exit. We are not dependent on the stock market and on having fast returns. So we can bring in these projects, which might be a little bit too risky for pharma to in-license, and then bring them to the next level of risk and also data to make them more mature in terms of clinical data, but also sometimes we also can help these companies or the assets to bring it into a better formulation.
And I'm super glad that we have you on the podcast here today, Sandra, because a big topic of discussion is always patient quality in drug development. So how can we let's give some advice to companies today and what you're doing at Debiopharm. How can we improve the quality, the patient quality of life as it relates to drug development?
Yeah, I mean, there are different topics there. One thing is, there are many patients out there which are still heavily undertreated because not many companies develop in all indications. So, for example, for GBM, glioblastoma is a very severe disease, and there are not many treatment options out. We have started just a phase 1 trial in this area, so we really trying to make an effort to bring novel innovation to these patients. I just spoke about oncology, but another part where we are, pursuing is really into developing novel antibiotics to fight antibiotic drug resistance, and that is something which will be a challenge for the world. We see this coming, and not many companies are pursuing, but we are a little bit pursuing the future here, and this is really a part which is very specific to us, where we can have the long range view, because this will not return into fast return of investment. This is more, really for the patient quality. This is poor patient quality. What we bring. And if you look at the current stock market, we fear that many innovations will not make it to patients because the biotech companies will run out of money. So we cannot, clearly take on all programs, but on some of the promising programs, we can basically fund them, and then either the company pursues them or we pursue them internally at Debiopharm, so that these innovations don't get lost for patients.
And it's your industry, your space is so interesting, right? Because we're at an interesting time in the world today. As it looks, we're facing a global drug shortage. And I would really love for you to talk about how Debiopharm bridges that gap between, the disruptive research that you're doing, but also, creating these real world applications that uh, make sure that the patients are receiving the life changing drugs that they need.
Yeah, and there's a very simple example. Coming back to the antibiotics, we know these days that there's one site in Europe only which is still manufacturing, and there are very few companies who are still developing. So I see a drug shortage there coming very soon, and we already have experienced it. So on that side, We are really pursuing this, and we have several research programs ongoing. And clearly, they're also depending on government funding. So we're working together with the government in the US, but also in Europe, to achieve grants to bring these products to patients one day. While securing partnerships for our antibiotics portfolio, that will also give these companies some arguments why they need to keep certain plants where these will be manufactured. And what I did not speak so much about, but what we also have, we have our own manufacturing in Martigny. This is the site where we have also over 200 scientists, and there we are working on novel formulations of products, but we are also clearly making sure that some essential products reach the patients for which we are responsible for worldwide supply, like triptorelin. Not many people know, but we are basically responsible for the worldwide supply. And I can tell you during the COVID phase, we were one of the few suppliers who could supply, because in Switzerland, the supply chain was not interrupted in Debiopharm.
Thank you for all that you're doing on that front, and in other areas as well. By the way, um, last question I have for you, Sandra, as we wrap things up, and I hope we can have you come back on because you've provided some great insights across the board here today. What's next for the future of biopharma?
Yeah, this is something, we are basically thinking about as well, because we always have to anticipate the patient needs for the future. So we came back from ESCO and Bio, and clearly we saw all the development in radiopharmaceuticals and ADCs where we already invested, but clearly we are thinking beyond what is really coming in 10 years. And I think there was a big, big learning during the COVID phase by developing these mRNA vaccines, something which really was speeded up through development of this vaccine. And we also anticipate that there will be more developments going into cancer vaccines, and that would be actually, the best of the worlds if we could vaccinate patients against cancer, or at least give them a vaccine to enhance the immune response so that they can respond. And there are no official data here, but I think there were also some patient reports that basically patients through vaccination, actually through the COVID vaccine, did better in the end. And it all has to do with the immune system. So we have to understand better the immune system. We have to be better in producing these vaccines to understand more RNA therapeutics. And could be also an area where we can explore more, because again, as I said, we are not afraid in investing into disruptive science. Vaccine development is long, but we also don't need a fast return of investment. And third, we have manufacturing on the ground, so we can actually also support companies in manufacturing these novel, vaccines products based on mRNA technology, for example.
Well, oh, sorry, you're going to say something else?
Yeah, and I forgot one part. Actually, I have to bring up front. I mean, I just spoke about our development organization, but clearly we also have our investment fund, and this is a big part where we are very visible these days. And this is also what is next in the future of biopharma, because we are investing already directly into AI, because for patients' outcome, it is so crucial to have these parameters assessed, so we can use AI to select the right patient for the right clinical trial. And that will make it much more better for everyone, cost effective for the development, shorter timelines, higher chances of responses by basically analyzing the tumor, the images, and basically biomarkers to really bring the right patient into these trials. And this is an effort which we leverage already in our development, and that will become more and more important for all companies. But this will be a big step forward for having more successful clinical readouts.
Yeah, it'll be great to see how that continues to evolve. you have to go pretty far nowadays to not run into someone that has at least experimented with AI or is trying some different things with it. It is pretty incredible what it's able to do, especially when you feed it the right information, right? So if we can have continuously more accurate studies, the right people will reduce complications also in those patients going through those studies, right? As a result, it's really interesting how this will continue to evolve. I'm glad you mentioned it too before we wrapped up there, because that's that is definitely part of the future of biopharma.
Anything else you want to learn about Debiopharm? We didn't have too much time, so I would, recommend everyone just connect with us because, again, it is a very special business model. We are very fortunate because we can really do where the science leads us to. We don't have huge restraints. Clearly, everyone wants to be successful. Our success is really bringing innovative medicines to patients, but we are open to disruptive novel technologies, and that is where we are. This is really where we want to move forward and have an impact on patients' health in the long term.
I love it. Sandra, I want to thank you again so much for joining me on the Bio Breakthroughs podcast. Hopefully, we can have you come on again in the future and we can dive into some more topics. But really appreciate you giving us an overview of the company here today.
It was a pleasure, Jared, and let me know if I can help. We are there for patients and for our partners to make an impact. That is really our mission.